I have something that I use every single day that is completely unique. Nobody else has one like it. It's beautiful, it's strong, and I reckon it's going to last at least 1,000 years. And in this video, we're going to talk about why I have it, who made it, and why all of that matters, and particularly how this relates to one man's journey from software development to woodworking. My dad had a metal shaver box on his bedside table throughout my childhood. I was always drawn to it because it represented so much of what I admired about my dad. It was practical, robust, and honest. Sometime in my teens, my dad gave me that box, and 40 years later, it remains a treasured item of mine. And it contains a bunch of memories from my past, all sorts of different things like business cards from my first jobs, working for car and motorcycle magazines. Some of the really cool stuff like my very first driver's license, when I sold Mercedes-Benz's, my business card from that, 3D postage stamps from Yemen and somewhere else, my original Australian Journalists Association membership card, a patch from the Australian Safari where I was the official photographer for the organisers back in '86, I think that was. That was incredible. 10,000 kilometres over 10 days with about 2 hours sleep a night. And the car magazine that I used to work for, Car Australia, a patch from that. And one other really unusual thing, this knife that was my grandfather's over in Germany. He was captured by the Russians during World War II and taken to Siberia. And his arm was chopped off, or his hand was chopped off at the wrist, and they sliced it down the middle and experimented on him, did all sorts of horrible experiments without anesthetic. So when he finally returned to Germany, he only had one hand, and this was an item that he used. So I've never really used it for anything. I've just kind of, I got it when I was, I think, about 8 years old when we went to Germany, and I've always treasured it. I never particularly liked him. He was a horrible man, absolutely horrible man. Wasn't very good to my father during his childhood, but I have that, so there you go. And a couple of other little knickknacks like a seashell from a seashell from Mount Martha Beach, where I grew up down on the Mornington Peninsula at the very bottom of Australia. And this one was picked up by my daughter Amy on Mount Martha Beach in January 2005, so that's kind of cute. But anyway, over the last few years, I've had this dream, this fantasy of creating my own very special box, something that I can sort of keep until I die, pass on to my son, something that is more robust than the metal tin that I got from my dad, even though that thing will probably last forever too. But I wanted something that was personalised, that wasn't a filler shave box, something that was just unique to me. I contemplated making it myself. I thought that maybe I could rekindle some of those fond childhood memories of making stuff in my dad's shed, but I lacked the tools to do a proper job of it. And that's where Frank comes in. Before retiring, Frank headed up the development team of the software company that I've worked for since 1997. And after buying a coastal home on the rugged and beautiful Phillip Island at the bottom of Australia, he began to reduce his time in the office until 10 years later, he fully retired. Transitioning this way into retirement helped avoid that retirement shock that happens to so many men where, you know, you're working one day, you're retired the next, and then 2 years later you drop dead. But that's only half the story. It's what Frank did during that transition period that made all the difference. Frank grew up during hard times in southern Italy with parents who had to be adaptable to provide for the young family, like so many families during that era. This meant building things and repairing things just to stay alive. This resourcefulness carried through Frank's career, except his tools were computers, software, and people. Those tools changed thanks to a series of events that led to the development of his first physical project, a large blackwood dining table. With no training, no plan, and $1,000 worth of machine timber in his garage, he set about replicating a $7,000 piece of furniture. By now, Frank had acquired a bunch of woodworking tools for smaller projects that he'd done in the past, but for the first time, he had a dedicated space under the house to indulge his passion. The computers had given way to a bench saw, a lathe, and all the stuff that comes with making things from timber. And from dawn to dusk, Frank lost himself in the meditative practice of learning, creating, and improving, just like many of us do with our landscape photography. Other projects followed: toys for his grandkids, furniture for family and friends, woodworking for local community projects, including the restoration of a captain's table from an English ship that sank off Phillip Island in 1906. Thanks to these projects, Frank has found a renewed sense of purpose by immersing himself in the generous act of creating beautiful objects with his hands for the benefits of family, friends, and the community. And speaking of generosity, if you're enjoying this video, please do give it a thumbs up. Frank makes a point of refusing any paid projects. He flatly refuses money for any of the things that he builds for family and friends, because that way he can choose what sort of projects he wants to work on and who he wants to create them for.
So about there.
I really value the times that I got to work with Frank, and truth be told, I wouldn't have done anywhere near as well in the early years without him. Everybody valued his pragmatism, his knowledge, his skill, and probably more than anything, his authenticity. Within minutes of meeting him, people knew that they could trust him. And paired with Ken's very similar character traits, Ken was the CEO and is now the chairman of the board. Those are the things that ultimately built our software business. I'm sure Frank's going to balk at this when he sees it, but he is truly one of the most generous, decent, and honourable people I've ever known. So anyway, when I learned that he was crafting beautiful furniture pieces from his home down at Phillip Island, I asked if he'd be interested in building this heirloom piece for me. I believe that, having it made by a person who I so admire would add kind of a layer of specialness to the whole project. And thankfully, he agreed to do it. I pretty much knew what I wanted. It had to be robust and heavy, like everything that my dad has ever built. And I wanted it to contain my mountain logo and be of a dark, rare, and sort of uniquely grained timber. Frank came back with a few recommendations, and soon it was decided. The box would be built out of a beautifully dark-grained African wenge timber with my mountain logo inlaid in the face of the box in American oak. So I drove the 2.5 hours to Frank's island paradise with my strips of timber on board, and then began to watch him start the process of making my one-off valet box. There's something truly special about making things from timber, because every tree is unique. Every piece that's hewn from a tree is unique. And so therefore, every item made from timber is effectively a one-off. When I touch an item that's been crafted from wood, I think about the time that it took for that tree to mature. I think about the weather it endured, perhaps the fires and the droughts and the storms that it survived, and the time it took to harvest and prepare and dry the timber, just so we can gather around, say, a dining table that's been crafted from its flesh, or hold a special box designed to last several lifetimes. Eventually, and in between Frank's travels and my crazy work schedule, the day came to receive Frank's masterful work. This beautiful valet box will stay on my desk until I die, and then it'll go to my son, and then hopefully to his son or daughter as well. Frank is fortunate. He found his thing, his passion in retirement. I already know what mine's going to be. Mine's going to be more photography. It's going to be more filmmaking. It's going to be writing, because I've been writing since I was 16. And I think it's going to be some woodworking too, because there's just something very special about working with timber. So what are you going to do in retirement? How are you going to make that transition from working your ass off and whatever it is that you do to pursuing more connection with people, more creativity? These are the things that I've been learning are so vital to a healthy retirement, is to find something that arouses your curiosity, that allows you to engage in something very creative, which is why I really love landscape photography and making videos and that sort of stuff, because it's interesting and challenging and creative, and it's ever expanding. There's no limit to what you can do and what you can learn. Reconnecting with people too that are important in your life, or making new connections. All these things become possible, far more possible, when you have more time to pursue them with greater depth. So curious to know what you're planning to do with your retirement, or if you've just retired recently, what it has allowed you to do that you just weren't able to do before. I'm genuinely interested in this topic. I can't stop thinking about it at the moment. But finally, to you, Frank, thank you for making this thing for me. It is truly special and unique. And to me personally, it's very valuable. And so are you.
So 310 to there, we're well away from that crack. We're going to now down the middle. We're going to cut this splitter down the middle, and that'll be the bottom of the tray and the bottom of the box.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you watch this one next. It's about buying what you really want before you die, and how I actually did it. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye for now.